Hello fellow Boltlings, I am Reaverjolt and welcome to another video. Today I get to educate some fans because I've noticed that not a lot of people know about the Deviant monsters coming to Monster Hunter Stories 2. This is especially evident in some of the reaction videos I've seen from some of the other YouTubers, so that's why this video is a thing. I'm gonna teach you guys about Deviants. Now before we get started, I want to mention that I will not talk about the lore of the Deviants. For one, it's because as someone who knows a lot about Deviants, I never really paid attention to the lore that much. That most likely has to do with the fact that there's barely any. Trust me, I've tried. The only thing about Deviant lore I could find was the monsters in-game descriptions, and they don't say much about them. So instead, I'll tell you guys about where the Deviants came from, and talk about other things about them that are non-lore related. Also, if you guys already know about Deviants, which some of you likely will, this video might not be for you because it's only really for those who don't know about Deviants at all. You can still watch, but just expect the video to tell you what you already know. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. So to start, the idea of Deviants came from Capcom wanting a way to use the Street Pass feature back when Monster Hunter Generations was in development for the 3DS. They wanted to have a system that allowed you to earn special tickets for hunting with other players. This then led them to wanting to have special monsters to make the Street Pass feature worth using. And that's when the idea of Deviants came to be. The concept was to take the original monsters and essentially spice them up with new moves and a new look, kinda like with variants, but a bit more exaggerated. Now let's talk about the way Deviants work. The way the system works is when you get to a certain point in Generations or GU, you'll be eligible to get these tickets called Special Permits. They will allow you to take on Deviants depending on the amount you spend on a particular level of quest with said Deviant. Back in Generations, being around other players rewarded you with these permits, but in Generations Ultimate, you don't even have to be online anymore to do it. The way you get special permits in GU is by doing a certain number of quests and talking to the former Street Pass cat for free permits, and by buying them with Ycademy points from your trader. Now, having special permits wasn't enough. You had to unlock the Deviants first, and unlocking them requires you to hunt the base versions of those monsters. Some monsters like Red Helm Arzuros and Stonefist Hermitar can be unlocked as soon as you hunt their base low rank versions, and others like HELLBLADE Glavenus and Dreadking Rathalos need to be unlocked by hunting the base high rank versions. Additionally, you had to reach a certain hunter rank within the hub before you could even take on different levels of the Deviant quests. Now let's talk about how the Deviant quests work. The first quest you do, you hunt the Deviant monster normally, but after you beat it, there will be other quests after it that become progressively more difficult. Examples include capture quests, hunting 2 of the same monster, on-site items only, hunting up to 3 of the same monster in huntathons, hunting the base version alongside the Deviant, the list goes on. In addition to that, you would start seeing changes in the monster's attack patterns as the quests got harder. Back in Generations, there were a total of 10 quests for each Deviant, but in Generations Ultimate, there were 6 new Deviants added and those ones were only given 5 quests each. The Deviants from the base game got 5 more quests on top of the 10 they already had, making that a total of 15 quests for each Deviant, which is a lot. On top of this, when you hit Hunter rank 100 and you complete every quest of the Deviant you've hunted, you can unlock the EX Deviant quests. The EX versions of the Deviant monsters are well known to be some of the hardest monsters in the franchise. EX means extreme, hence the difficulty. Now let's talk about the equipment before talking about the monsters themselves. Starting with the weapons, they had no decoration slots, but they all had a unique property to them. Deviant weapons can charge your hunter arts 20% faster than regular weapons. As for Deviant armor, none of them had decoration slots, but they all had special bonuses that made up for that. The bonuses are called soul skills. These special skills combine the effects of 3 other armor skills, up to 4 in GU. The maxed out versions of these skills in GU are called Soul X skills. To have these bonuses active, you have to upgrade each armor piece to a certain amount. For the Soul X skills, you need to max out the armor completely in G rank. This required a lot of grinding in Deviant quests. Which reminds me, there's a thing in GU called Transmog. It was harder to make fashion sets back then because there was no layered armor technically, but the reason I bring up Transmog is because if you want to get the transmogged versions of the Deviant armors, you have to beat the EX versions of those Deviants. Yeah, that's quite the task for a fashion set. Now let's finally talk about the Deviant monsters themselves. Well, at least the ones that are being added to Stories 2. The first is Dreadqueen Rathian. This Rathian is more deadly since it can use deadly poison and has poison spike nodes around the area when you engage her in battle. These nodes can poison you on contact, but from what I remember, you can destroy them, but it's difficult and not necessary. This Rathian can also use a variety of tail moves that can throw you off if you're not used to her attack patterns. Next is Dreadking Rathalos. This Rathalos is probably the most difficult iteration of Rathalos, mostly because it can use a variety of fireballs, most of which have a wide radius, and some even explode half of the area he's in when you fight him. On top of this, in order to get him out of the air with flash bombs, both of his wings need to be broken first. This doesn't bode well for most players as he tends to fly quite a bit and not land very often. Next is Silverwind Nargacuga. This Nargacuga has quite a few ranged attacks up its sleeve. Most of them come in the form of air blade attacks. It can also inflict bleed and sometimes even snipe you with blades that come from above. Next is my favorite variation of Tigrex, Grimclaw Tigrex. It has a decent amount of moves that can blow you back, most of which literally shatter the earth when it uses its arms. It can also do roars like that of Brute and Molten Tigrex. It'll be interesting to see how Grimclaw differs from the other versions of Tigrex in stories too. Up next is Thunderlord Zinogre. This Zinogre is always at full power and uses a lot more electric moves than the normal one. It can also use a lot of flips and slams that can really catch you off guard. Most of the slams are followed up by lightning strikes, and its biggest attack is a big thunderous explosion. Next is Bloodbath Diablos. This is probably the most insanely designed deviant out there. Having crooked and mutated looking horns and darker colors makes this monster one of the most menacing. It's the only deviant in the franchise that has its own theme song for two of its phases. The first phase is when he's a bit slow, but he can still pick up speed. In the second phase, his red veins start to glow, and he gets much faster and hits significantly harder. One of the craziest things he does is when he charges up and builds up steam, and explodes all of that steam, which does so much damage that it's crazy. Now for what I like to call the Deviant 4. Let's start with SOULSEER MIŻUTSUNEO. This version of MIŻUTSUNEO not only uses water element and causes bubble blight, but it also uses fire in combination with its bubble attacks. It has grayed out fur that's hard to hit until it turns red, which it does by licking its fur? It's also very well known for being blind but accurate. It also does front flip slams that send you flying. Next is ELDERFROST Gammoth. I'm going to refer to this as a female since anytime I call Gammoth a he, my fans get triggered. ELDERFROST is an aged Gammoth that survived a lot of battles like most of the Deviants, having ice as armor for some parts of her body as opposed to snow, and as with all Deviants, a good amount of new moves. One of which is not recommended to block at all because of the damage you take from it. The move that does this is a charging move that keeps on going, and if you're in the way of the attack, you probably won't survive. Now for one of my favorites, HELLBLADE GLAVENOSO. This version of GLAVENOSO has most of the original moveset, but is always charged with fire and has blast modes for both his mouth and his tail. In blast mode, he can inflict blast blight with most of his tail moves and bite attacks. His tail slams even explode on impact, dealing massive damage to those inflicted with Blast Blight. The popular 360 tailspin is then followed up with a second one when his tail is in blast mode. It's pretty crazy. And finally, my most favorite of the Deviants and favorite monster of all time, BOLTREAVER ASTALOS. Let me show you a short clip of my reaction when I first saw BOLTREAVER in the launch trailer for Stories 2. Yeah. You bet I'm more hyped than ever. I wasn't even expecting it at all. In my mind, I was thinking, oh, this'll be a recap of all that was shown before, which was the case for the first third of the trailer. But I was in shock when I saw the Deviants, especially BOLTREAVER. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. This version of Astalos starts off looking like the normal one, but don't let that deceive you. The green mode is only 10% of his power. But even in this state, he has some new moves. For starters, he can flip his body while shooting these needle-like projectiles. He will progressively turn a cyan blue color with each part of his body, and each part that does turn blue comes with a new move. His tail can pierce the ground and cause an electric explosion followed up by a ring of lightning. His wings can generate a magnetic energy ball that draws things in, and he can use a powerful energy sword from his head that can often 2- or 1-shot most hunters. This is probably the scariest move he has because of the damage it does. But here's the best part. Anytime he's in rage mode, all of him turns blue instantly, which means he will often use all of the new moves I mentioned. Oftentimes, most of these moves can be used in combinations with the moves he already had prior to being blue. Now this blue mode doesn't stay like this forever. You can knock him out of it when you hit each part enough times to get him back to green again. The other way he gets out of blue mode is when he's already at full power and uses a dive that expels all that energy on impact, causing massive damage, but losing the blue mode. But the funny thing is, it's very easy for him to get it back, as all that needs to happen is for him to get enraged again. His exhaustion doesn't last very long either, as he'll often go into rage mode after a minute or two of damaging him. And did I mention you can't use flash bombs on him until you break his horn? I could go on and on about my favorite monster, but I won't for the sake of video length. The only other things left to cover here are the Deviants that have not been confirmed for Stories 2. Red Helm Arzuros, Snowberry Lagambi, Stonefist Hermitar, Drilltusk Tetsukabra, Deadeye Garuga, Crystalbeard Uragan, Nightcloak Malfestio, and Rust Razor Centaur. These are the only Deviants that are seemingly not coming back in Stories 2. Not sure if they'll bring these back, but it would be interesting to see them again. But until they give us an update that shows them off, which likely won't happen, we won't know until all the updates are already out. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very much looking forward to what they'll do with the Deviants and what their weapons and armor will be like in the game. And that'll be it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Consider liking the video and consider subscribing to keep up with my uploads. Be kind to one another, and have a most wonderful day.